So we don't have any commercial breaks or anything. We don't have any sponsors.
No sponsors.
Even though if I had to pick a couple, it would be Sherry's Berries and Goldenberg's Peanut Chews. But yeah, we're not good enough for that. So, okay, so the next bracket here is the Danino's Pizzeria, right? Pizzeria is the name?
Yeah,
bracket. Pizzeria. All right, Frank, give us the backstory on Danino's.
All right, so Danino's, probably, it's the most famous pizzeria on Staten Island, rightfully so. They probably have the best regular, plain, or some like to call it cheese pie in Staten Island. The people from all over the boroughs come to Danino's, and like it's hyped up, but the hype is well deserved. I don't think you're gonna get a better plain slice in Staten Island. So Danino's, I mean, it has to. One of the brackets has to be named after Danino's. It's more, so Lee's Tavern is more of a bar. Danino's is more of a sit-down restaurant type of thing. But, people, they have beer there too and everything. So.
All right. So side question, kind of a curveball question that you weren't expecting. I did the seating for the brackets, or I participated in the seating of the brackets. The seating also, I guess, kind of occurs for the names of the brackets too. Do you think I made a mistake in putting Danino's 2 and Lee's 1?
Oh, wow. Now you're really putting me on the spot. You're making me choose.
This is a bonus question.
So Lee's has more sentimental value because I went there more often.
Yeah.
And it's in my neighborhood that I grew up in, Dongan Hills, right? I mean, I went to grammar school at St. Anne's, and it's like right down the block.
Yeah.
So Lee's has more sentimental value, but if I want a plain slice of pizza, just, regular boom, cheese, sauce, dough, Danino's has a better regular slice. So, but if I want a clam pie, they both have clam pies, but Lee's has a better clam pie in my opinion.
All right.
So it's very close. It's like a coin. It's like a coin toss, honestly. It's a coin toss, but yeah. So.
Okay, good. So, all right. So basically a coin toss. That's good. Your favorite menu item? I know you just said the clam pie at Lee's is better. Do you still go with the clam pie at Danino's, or do you want something different at Danino's? What's your favorite thing?
Danino's, I'm good with just a plain pie, honestly. Just straight up, regular, nothing on it. No, I'll dress it up with some garlic powder, some hot pepper. That's it. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. So getting into things here. All right. So we have a brand new 16 seeds here. We're going to begin with the 1 versus 16 matchup. Luckily, all you kids at home know the format already, so we don't have to go over that again. But all right. So the 1 seed here is a New York Knicks event versus a 16th seeded Providence Friars event. The 1 seed is the entire collection of Knicks head coaches during Frank's life.
That's right.
Known life. Or life where he could know things and see things and realize.
Right, and experience, yeah.
Yeah. Versus the 16th seeded 2016 NCAA tournament loss to UNC. This was a second round matchup. Again, this is the elusive second round NCAA tournament event that took place, the only one during our time at Providence College, and actually during Ed Cooley's time as an NCAA coach.
Right.
All right. What do you got on this one?
All right. So all Knicks head coaches, I think they're so bad that I think it's necessary to delve into each one a little bit. So I think the only good coach that they've had in recent memory is probably Mike Woodson, who for some reason does not have a head coaching job. Mike Woodson was a pretty decent coach for the Knicks. But aside from that, it's just one after another, whether it's Dave Fizdale, who was with the team less than 2 years and no longer has a job, Jeff Hornacek, who was a disaster, and the team showed no progress under him. We got Derek Fisher, of course, did nothing for the team. Nothing at all. So I said Mike Woodson. He was before that. Mike Woodson, like I said, was decent. Mike D'Antoni, who I am not a fan of, even though he's a coach in the league and he's coached the Lakers, he's coached the Rockets. He had better success with the Suns than he did with the Knicks. I'm not a Mike D'Antoni fan. He had limited success with the Knicks, but wasn't a very good coach, in my opinion. Of course, Isaiah Thomas, who I believe coached the Knicks from 06 to 08, and that was a complete disaster. He also served as GM, and we'll get into that at some point in the bracket, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, Knicks head coaches are very bad, and you can argue, that it's deserving of a 1 seed. We'll see how far it advances. as for the 2016 NCAA tournament loss, I mean, this is the year UNC won the whole thing, right?
Yep.
There was no way that they were going to get past them. UNC was a force to be reckoned with. So this is rightfully seeded as a 16 seed. Again, as Pat mentioned, this is the only time during our four-year tenure, undergrad tenure at Providence College, that the Friars advanced past the first round, because every other year they were knocked out in the first round. So yeah, all Nick's head coaches definitely worse in advance.
All right, that's kind of what I expected there. Okay, we got another Friars event as the 8 seed versus a 9 seed Giants event. Okay, so the 8 seed is a first round loss. This was actually the highest. This year was the highest seeding the Friars attained in the NCAA tournament of our tenure at Providence College. They were a 6 seed, and they played host to the Dayton Flyers. Dayton is in Ohio. This game was in Columbus, Ohio. They lost the game. You can kind of hopefully figure out why. Dayton is only about an hour away from Columbus. And I've been to Dayton and Columbus, which both have been joys. But versus a 9 seed 2016 playoff loss championship game to the Packers?
No. First round. Wild card round. Okay. Wild card weekend. Yeah. So, 2015 NCAA tournament loss. This is probably the best Providence team that we experienced. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I also agree, too, that we definitely saw a major choke job from LaDante Henton.
Yeah.
Within the last couple of games of this season, and that kind of led to what happened here, partially because there's another major reason why they lost this game, which I alluded to.
Yeah, so I'll get into that. So essentially, it was a home game for Dayton.
Yeah.
With Dayton, they played in the first 4 that year, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and let me just, I'll if you don't mind, I'll kind of go a little deeper.
Yeah, that's fine.
The first 4 is held in Dayton, Ohio.
Right. Yep.
This was the University of Dayton, and it's at the University of Dayton's arena. So the University of Dayton, even though they were an away team in the first 4, got a home game in the first 4 in Dayton, Ohio at their own arena. And then they go an hour up the road to play in Columbus at the Blue Jackets arena, which that arena is really nice. Columbus is not very nice, but if you want to know about Columbus, talk to either Frank's family, soon-to-be family, or me. You get 2 different spectrum views. But Dayton came to Columbus to play the Friars. The Friars were already there, waiting for them. And being there at this game, this was, to me, the most hostile environment I have ever been in. As a fan of I guess, opposing team, even though we were the home team,
right.
This was just pitiful for me to experience and for this team to experience, because they basically they lost by like at least 15, I think, this game.
Yeah.
When they were a 6-11 matchup. But go ahead.
Yeah, so this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is probably the best Providence team that we saw during undergrad, with Chris Dunn and LaDante Henton. And so was Ben on this team? Not yet.
Yeah. Ben was a freshman, I think.
Yeah. So Ben Bentel was on the team.
And Chuck as well.
Yeah. So this team, like Pat said, was they were rightfully so. They were a 6 seed, and that's pretty solid. And the thing that stands out to me most about this game was Ed Cooley just completely losing it, or Coach Cooley completely losing it and slamming a chair. Right? Wasn't that this game?
Yeah, I'll go into this as well too. Yeah. This game did not go well at all, and during one.
I hate to cut you off, but I think it's also worth mentioning the game didn't start till like 11 o'clock at night, 11:15 at night.
Yeah,
I think that played a factor too. I really think that played a factor.
Yeah, and I'll also bring up too, as a side note, that I think had a big factor in the 2017 loss to Creighton, because that was a 9:30 game. That was the only year out of our time there that they played a game at 9:30. All the other years they were in the 2:30 game in the first round. Yeah. So that's another fun fact for you.
I remember my brother Matt texting me, "When is this game going to start?"
Which one, the Creighton one or the Dayton?
No, not the Creighton. The Dayton against the Providence, the one that's in this bracket. I remember him texting me. He's like, "When is this game?" Because he likes college basketball. He's into it. And he wanted to watch the game, and he stayed up for the game, but he was texting me like, "When is this game going to start?" I'm like, "We're waiting just as you're waiting. Like,
Yeah.
we're waiting for it to start.
Yeah, you should have asked me when this game was going to start. I could have yelled over to somebody there, but yeah, this game was for some reason this year and the year after the games they were like the last game of the night that we were in. The USC game in Raleigh was the same thing too. It was the last game of the night. The USC game in Raleigh didn't start nearly as late, and there was barely anybody in the stands, which maybe was why the Friars won that game, but. This game here, yeah. So Cooley called the timeout, and I'm getting back to the chair. Cooley called the timeout, which it was needed. It was really, really needed, and he threw a chair down. It was standing up, and he tossed it to the ground. Basically, he flipped it down. And due to this action, apparently Terry Oglesby, who I will call out by name here, a Big Ten official, he apparently decided that was worthy of a technical foul, even though it had nothing to do with the course of the game, and it was not even an action directed at the referees, that there was somehow a technical foul called in this.
Yeah, he was frustrated with his players, not with the refs.
Yeah, which it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, sometimes the refs they don't learn, but yeah, it was a tough loss. But anyway, we don't want to spend too much time on it. Moving on to the 2016 wildcard game. So this is the game where the Giants, the Cowboys won the division. I think they were 14-2, and the Giants were, I don't remember if they were the 5 or the 6 seed, but that really doesn't matter. And they went to Lambeau Field to play the Packers, and this was the weekend the weekend prior or the day prior. I don't remember exactly what, but a bunch of the Giants wide receivers went on a boat in Miami, and they had that photo taken.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's what this game's about. And the Giants were blown out. It was tough. Eli played very well. His receivers let him down. Eli hit Odell Beckham in the hands with passes, right on a dime. Odell decided to drop them. Perhaps he was having too much fun in Miami, but who knows? This is a tough matchup. Also, I'd like to point out that this was Ben McAdoo's first year as head coach of the Giants. So believe it or not, he actually made the playoffs once. I'm gonna, as bad as the Giant loss was, I'm gonna have to go with the 2015 NCAA tournament loss to Dayton because I expected the Friars to, advance, have a decent shot at advancing to the Sweet 16 at the very least. So.
Yeah, I remember being in Columbus for that game, and the couple days before, because I don't want to get too much into it, but basically they send the team and the traveling party out 2 days early before the game.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a cool experience within itself. But I remember doing homework and stuff, and I tried to plan to do a lot of my homework before, but I did some homework there, and I'm emailing my professors saying, and they're asking when am I going to be back, and it's like, well, if we beat this opponent, then we're going to do that, and if we keeps going on and on, and I was kind of excited because we were a 6 seed, but all for naught. That 11-11 matchup down in Dayton was Boise State and Dayton, and I was really hoping for Boise State, but anyways. Moving on to the 5-12 matchup here, these are Yankee events, and you're going to notice this does get Yankee heavy at some points because there are more Yankees events that Frank found. But the 5 is the 2017 ALCS Game 7 loss to Houston, or not Game 7, but it's the whole series. But they lost in Game 7 versus another wonderful signing, the Jose Contreras signing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Wow. All right. So 2017 Yankees. The 2017 Yankees were – so a lot of the baby bombers were on that team. This is when Sanchez and Judge was second in MVP voting to Altuve that year. So they were ahead of schedule in 2017 and went on a little bit of a magic run. They were down 2-0 to the Indians in the ALDS, ended up winning the next 3 games and advancing past the Indians, who were – tremendous that year back in 2017. They won 100+ games. The Yankees won, 3 in a row down 2-0. So that was very impressive. And so they went on to face the Astros, who had beaten the Red Sox in the ALDS. And the Astros, I mean, this series, even though the Yankees weren't expected to go that deep, it was tough. Every home team won every game in that particular series. Game 6 was really tough to watch because the Yankees couldn't hit Verlander. They were up 3-2 because they won the three games at Yankee Stadium. The Yankees pounded the Astros at Yankee Stadium. But so in Game 6, Verlander kind of stole all the momentum because they couldn't hit him. And then, they couldn't in Game 7. They couldn't. I think it was like a combination of McCullers and Morton who pitched, and they had trouble. Yeah, they had trouble hitting them as well. So, and Game 2 was also painful too because the game was tied and going into extras, I believe.
Yeah.
And Altuve hit one in the gap in like right center field, and Judge hit Didi, who was the cutoff man, and Didi fired a perfect strike home. And I forget who was coming home. It might have been it was either like Correa or Springer. It might have been Springer. I don't remember exactly who it was.
Yeah.
And Didi made a perfect throw, but Sanchez decided to drop it, of course. And Altuve scored safely, and that handed Game 2 to the Astros, and they took a 2-0 series lead and ended up winning in 7. So that was really tough. The Contreras signing. The funny thing about Jose Contreras is that he was highly coveted by both the Red Sox and Yankees. There's a story about how Theo Epstein, when he heard that he'd lost out on Jose Contreras, when both the Yankees and Red Sox were competing to sign him, there's a story. I don't know if it's true or not. I think it is true. I think Epstein has confirmed it. Epstein was GM of the Red Sox at the time, and he took a chair and threw it out the window. He was so angry to hear that Contreras signed with the Yankees, but it turned out really he should have been happy because Contreras was not a very good Yankee. Yeah. The thing I remember about him is that he threw a heavy forkball, but he never had any success. He threw a heavy sinker. I think Contreras ended up winning did he end up winning the World Series with the White Sox maybe? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I remember him on the White Sox more than I do on the Yankees, honestly.
Yeah, he might have only spent like a year or two with the Yankees.
Yeah.
But yeah, he defected from Cuba, and his first team in the majors was with the Yankees.
Yeah.
But like I said, the Red Sox and Yankees both went after him hard. He ended up signing with the Yankees. Mm-hmm. But it turned out to be a very bad signing.
Yeah.
But in terms of the matchup, the 17 ALCS clearly.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. The 4th versus 13 matchup here is the 2012 ALCS, in which the Yankees were swept by the Tigers, versus the 13-seeded Rangers. First round loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins. How about it?
All right. So 2016 is I'll start with the 13th. 2016 was kind of the year that the Rangers started becoming a little bit less competitive than they had been in 15 and 14. Mm-hmm. So this is as the Penguins were beginning to rise and the Rangers were kind of coming back to earth a little bit. So it was kind of it wasn't a total surprise that they lost to the Penguins, and this is the first of the back-to-back championship years for the Penguins. So this is rightfully seeded as a 13th seed. Could have even seeded maybe a little bit lower. The 2010 ALCS, the Yankees lost in 6 to the Rangers. This is right in the middle of the Yankees. They just come off the World Series win over the Phillies in 2009. High expectations going into 2010 as well. Funny thing about 2010 is the Yankees didn't win the division. It was actually the Rays somehow who did. But the Rangers actually beat the Rays in the DS, and the Yankees swept the Twins as they always do. The Yankees swept the Twins in the division series, but then they had trouble against the Rangers and lost in 6 games. Cliff Lee was a member of that Ranger team. I think he pitched game 2 or 3 and pitched a shutout. Couldn't touch him. I believe the Yankees won game 5 to hold off elimination, but ended up losing game 6. This, like I said, this was 2010 is a year where you still have A-Rod, Jeter, Teixeira. Teixeira's in his second year with the team. CeCe's in his second year with the team.
Yep.
They still have a solid team, and there were high expectations for the 2010 ALCS. That was disappointing. That all advanced past the 16 first round loss.
Now, if I may just go back here, it was the 2012 ALCS. So does that change your reasoning at all? Or is the date messed up on the bracket?
No, 2010. I said that's right. 2010 lost to Texas. That's correct. Do you not have that on the bracket? Do I have something wrong?
Let me check my other bracket because. Hold on a second. This is where we should put in a commercial, but of course we don't have those.
We can cut this out.
No, it's still recording. All right, you know what it is? I handmade a bracket.
Okay.
So it doesn't really matter because I'm assuming I'm taking out one of our respondents brackets right now, which is the one you made. And the 2012 ALCS loss to Detroit is in the I put it in twice. That's my mistake. Okay. So you have the right one. You made the right bracket. So it is the 2012 to Texas. Okay.
2010 to Texas.
Oh, 2010. Sorry. So it is the 2010 to Texas.
Yeah.
And that's what you said. That's what you said was the winner, right?
That's right.
Okay. All right. I actually, when I was conducting this with one of our respondents, I noticed that a 16 seed was put in twice on my bracket that I created. So I was able to get that out of the way, but it didn't have a chance against the 1 seed anyways. So, all right. So the next up is a Rangers event, the 6-seeded signing of Wade Redden versus the 11-seeded, another dubious Yankee, Javier Vasquez.
Who had 2 stints with the Yankees. So.
Yeah.
Well, all right. We'll start with Wade Redden. Wade Redden was such a bad Ranger that I don't even really remember him. So the Rangers handed him like a 6-year contract, I think, and just a crazy amount of money. I think it was like $30 million, which at the time was like a lot. Mm-hmm. And he played so poorly for the Rangers that he was sent to the AHL, and then like after a couple of years, never played for the team again.
Yep.
But this is one of those where in the moment it didn't really sting too much because of all the teams that I root for, I probably jumped into the Rangers the latest. So this is like when I was starting to follow the Rangers. So it didn't really sting too much in the moment, but it probably did hurt the Rangers for years to come because there's salary cap implications when you make these poor free agent signings in the NHL, unlike baseball.
Yeah.
But Javier Vasquez. Separate stints with the Yankees, I think 04 and 10, or 03 and 10, if I'm not mistaken. Definitely 2010 was his second stint. Yeah. He was, I think somehow, his first stint with the Yankees, he made the All-Star team, which it doesn't make any sense because if you look at his numbers, his ERA was like in the mid to high 4, so I don't know how, he must have really tanked in the second half or something because I don't know how he made the All-Star team. But the Yankees, for some reason, after 09, decided like Vasquez would be like a good back of the rotation type of starter, and again was terrible for the Yankees. I think his ERA was north of 5, to no one's surprise. Yeah. So yeah, he did not pitch well for the Yankees in both his stints with the team. So I'm gonna have the Vasquez signing as advancing past Wade Redden.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Now moving on to the 3 versus 14 matchup, we have the Rangers versus Yankees event, or Yankees adjacent, I guess. The 3 seed is the 2012 Eastern Conference Final loss to the Devils versus the 14th seeded 2013 World Series victory by the Red Sox. Go ahead.
All right. So 2012. This is, I think, Tortorella's second to last year with the Rangers. Tortorella was a very good coach with the Rangers. Rangers tend to have pretty good head coaches. Vigneault was good too, but so yeah, the Rangers played the Devils, so that was a local matchup, and that was kind of hyped up in the area. So you don't want to see one of the local rivals advance past you. But the thing that sticks out about that series is, well, there's the one obvious thing, which is the Adam Henrique goal in Game 6, which I hear Doc Emmerich's call in my sleep. It's like when he screams Henrique, it's over. That's not a pretty sight for me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, one other thing sticks out to me about this series was the Devils were on a power play in one. I forget what game exactly it was, and they had this just like insane power play setup where they were feeding each other passes left and right, and the Rangers could not keep up with them. And at one point, the puck ended up on Kovalchuk's stick, and he just one-timed it right into the net. And it was at that point I had a feeling that, it wasn't going to work out for them. And I turned out to be right because the Rangers lost in 6 to the Devils. So that was pretty painful, especially because, like I said, it was a local matchup. But then the 2013 World Series, that one angers me. This is probably a little bit underseeded.
Okay.
The 2013 World Series bothers me a lot. Number one, I was a freshman in college. So, I mean, the first year I'm at Providence in New England, I have to see the Red Sox win the World Series of all things. The second thing that bothers me about this is that 2013 team, they, in my opinion, weren't that good. I still have a hard time understanding how they ended up winning the World Series. They caught magic at the right time. Every trade acquisition or free agency acquisition that the Red Sox made seemed to pan out somehow. You had Mike Carp somehow in over 300. You had Shane Victorino hitting grand slams in the World Series. You had Koji Uehara, who previously pitched for the Rangers, and he was a marginal pitcher for the Rangers and the Orioles. Somehow he's all of a sudden an all-star with the Red Sox. Yep. So it was very, very frustrating for me to watch that World Series because till this day, I still don't think that team was very good. And some of my suspicions about that team turned out to be right because the following year they had almost the same exact team, and they ended up finishing in last place. So that 2013 World Series bothers me. It still bothers me a lot. However, with that being said, losing to the Devils in the 2012 Eastern Conference Final, that'll advance past the 2013 World Series.
Yeah, and I honestly didn't even realize that the World Series was that high of a contender. That's kind of why I ranked it lower because it wasn't really Yankee related. It was more so.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. All right, and that's again that again is what you get for having a Boston guy do this. But all right, so the 7th seed here is a Yankee matchup. It's the Yankee versus Knicks. Knicks are the 10 seed. This is the 7-seeded 2007 Midges game against the Indians, which I believe was in Cleveland, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. Versus the 10-seeded New York Knicks signing of Eddie Curry, who I actually had to look up on Wikipedia. That's how unimportant this guy is, but to sports. But go ahead with what you think here, and it's kind of explain what these are.
Yeah, so I'll start with the Eddie Curry thing. Eddie Curry is one of Isaiah Thomas's many wonderful moves as general manager of the Knicks. He served as both he was so good. He served as both general manager and head coach, better than Bill Belichick, according to Jim Dolan. But Curry, they traded for him. I forget exactly where they got him from. I think maybe it was Dallas.
Yeah.
And I think they traded for him and then signed him to an extension right away. It was like one of those sign and trade and sign type of things, sign and trade type of things. Crazy, and they signed like, what was that?
Crazy NBA stuff.
Right. And they signed like a $45 or $50 million deal, which at the time was a lot of money. It was like a 4-year deal. And he turned out to be terrible for the Knicks, which doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. But then the 2007 Midges game against Cleveland, this was in the ALDS, so the first round of the playoffs. The Yankees were very good in 07, but this 07 Cleveland team was pretty damn good too because they had Sabathia still at the time. They had Fausto Carmona, who was pretty good pitcher at the time.
Then known as Fausto Carmona.
Right. Ended up like supposedly lying on his birth certificate. His actual name is Roberto Hernandez. But at the time, he was a good pitcher. Yeah. I think he actually might have started the Midges game, if I'm not mistaken. Carmona. If I'm not mistaken, I'll double check. But
yeah.
That's not the important part. The important part is Jabba Chamberlain pitching in Cleveland. I think it was game 3. Was it 3 or 4? Actually, I don't know exactly what game it was. I'll have to look into that. It's not important. The important part is I think Jabba came in and he was either up 1-0 or it was. Yeah, I think he was up 1-0 and he was in the game. And this is when Jabba was like lights out, phenom coming up out of the minors. I think like the 07 was his first year, so Joe Torre's still the manager at this time. This was his final season as manager. Mm-hmm. And they had the whole Jabba rules type of thing because they wanted to limit his innings. But Jabba came into the game in Cleveland, and there was just a swarm of bugs known as midges that attacked Jabba while he was pitching, and he couldn't get through the inning. He could barely get through the inning because the bugs were all over the place, and bug spray wasn't working. The Yankees ended up losing the game 2-1, if I'm not mistaken. And to this day, Joe Torre's biggest regret as manager was not telling the umpires to call off that game, because it should have been treated like a rain delay because the conditions weren't playable. If you want to look at the video, if whoever watches this video, look into the Jabba Midges game. It was terrible. The conditions weren't playable, and the game should have been stopped. So for that reason, that's going to advance past the Eddie Curry signing.
Okay. All right, and moving to the 2 versus 15 matchup here, we have, and correct me if I'm wrong as to why I seeded it so high, but I have Plaxico Burress shooting himself as the 2 seed versus a 15-seeded Eric Stahl trade by the Rangers in advance of a playoff run. Go ahead.
Wow. So Plaxico Burress shooting himself, this is properly seeded as a 2.
Good.
It's definitely up there. So this is 2008, the year after the Giants won the Super Bowl, and this was probably the best regular season they've had in my lifetime. I believe they finished the year 12-4, but with a week or 2 to go in the season, Plaxico Burress, it might have even been like 3 weeks or so. I don't know. It was towards the end of the season. It was the last 25% of the season. Plaxico Burress was at like a nightclub or something. Had a gun that he shouldn't have had possession of. Shoots himself in the leg. I don't know how that's possible or what happened. Supposedly it was an accident, but it brought so much unnecessary attention to the team. Burress was also a premier wide receiver at the time, so it hurt the team in that sense too because he was Eli Manning's top target. Like I said, the Giants were great at the time. They finished the year with the best record in the NFC and were a 1 seed. But after this whole situation happened, unwanted attention, plus the loss of your best wide receiver, the Giants ended up being knocked out by the Eagles in the divisional round. So they had the bye, ended up losing to the Eagles in the divisional round. And I think the main reason as to why that happened is because Burress injured himself.
Yeah.
And then as for the trade for Eric Stahl, I forgot about Eric Stahl. I mean, I think the Rangers gave up like 2 second-round picks for him or something. They paid way too high a price for him. He did not play well for the Rangers. It was not a good. I think it was 2016 maybe that they traded for him.
It was recent.
Yeah, it was fairly recent. It was like I think it was 2016. I can look that up later. 2016, 17, something like that. But he ended up playing with the Rangers for the rest of the year, but then signed as a free agent, I think, with the Wild, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
That's right.
So he spent half a year with the Rangers. They paid way too much for him in terms of trade value. Yep. So, but the Burress thing is going to advance past it, clearly.
Yeah, and of course, the reason why I asked you about that was because it does, to me, in the back of my head, it doesn't really have as big of an impact. I mean, but the reason why I put it so high was because it kind of seemed like there was from what I remember, there was a lot of hope in that team, and more so the pain and the shock of this event is why I kind of put it so high,
right?
Regardless of what events surrounded it or what happened after or whatnot. Okay, so moving on to the next round of this bracket here, we have the 1-seeded Knicks head coaches for your lifetime versus the 8th-seed Providence Friar lost to Dayton in the 2015 tournament.
Wow, this is a tough one. This is tough. So as bad as the 2015 NCAA tournament loss was, the Knicks head coaches, it's just a revolving door. They can never have a stable figure leading the team year in, year out. And I also think the fact that they've had such bad head coaches year after year or every couple of years, I think it's also had an impact on free agency. The free agency, the lack of continuity on the team, the high turnover on the team, both in terms of personnel and in terms of coaches, I think that affects free agents as well.
Yeah.
So I think the implications are greater. So I'm going to have to go with the Knicks head coaches.
Okay. And that's kind of where I thought you'd lean. Okay, so moving to the next one. It's a Yankee versus Yankee ALCS matchup here. 2017 loss to Houston or 2010 sweep by Texas or lost to Texas?
Lost. So the 2010 ALCS, the Yankees lost in 6, but this one's pretty easy for me. Even though the 2017 Yankees weren't expected to go very far, the loss to Houston, and also I forgot to mention the whole trash can thing with the Astros. That plays a huge factor too, because that was the year supposedly that they were pulling all that stuff.
Yeah.
The 2017 ALCS is definitely more painful than 2010 ALCS. That's going to advance.
Okay. All right. Moving down the line here, we have the 11th seeded Javier Vasquez, 10 years a Yankee, versus the 2012 Eastern Conference Finals loss to the Devils.
All right. This one's pretty easy also. 2012 Eastern Conference Final lost to the Devils. The whole local thing, I don't like any of the local teams that aren't my team, but like the Devils and Islanders tend to bother me because they're just like annoying little gnats that you want to swipe away. They have small fan bases, but the Islanders have a more passionate fan base than the Devils. But the Devils had a habit, especially in the early 2000s, of beating the Rangers. Marty Brodeur tended to have their number. So that was pretty painful. So I'm going to have to go with the loss to the Devils in the Eastern Conference Final.
Now, in your assessment of these other teams within your region that you don't like, in reference to the next matchup that we're going to talk about here, would you you describe them as annoying little bugs that kind of bother you? Would you describe them as midges?
I like the lead up to this matchup.
Yeah.
Wow. Boy, but this is a good match. This is a very good matchup.
Yeah.
2007 midges game. I can describe, instead of describing them as gnats, I'll describe them as annoying midges. Sure.
There we go. So
anyway, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Yes. No. This is the 7 seed midges game loss midges game loss in 2007 versus the Plaxico Burress shooting of himself.
Yeah, this is even though it's a good matchup, the Burress thing definitely more painful. I think one thing I forgot to mention about the Burress thing. Tom Coughlin says if that doesn't happen, the Giants win the Super Bowl in back-to-back years. So I don't know how true that is, but I think there's a good chance that that's the case. So I think the implications of that. I mean, there's no way to tell that in 2007 if the Yankees advance past the Indians, there's no guarantee that they're advancing past the Red Sox. That 2007 Red Sox team was great. I mean,
yeah.
So I'm gonna have to go with the Burress shooting himself.
Okay. All right, moving to the final 4 of this bracket here, we have the Knicks head coaches against the 2017 ALCS loss to Houston.
Oh, wow. You know what? The Knicks head coaches, I went into the ramifications of that. And they're big, and they're 1 seed for a reason. You did a good job with that, but the 17 ALCS, it bothers me. It really bothers me. Game 2, the Sanchez dropping the cutoff throw from Didi. Game 6, not being able to touch Verlander. The way they won those 3 games in New York so handily. The comeback in Game 4, where they were down 4-0 and ended up winning. Yeah, that series bothers me. I'm going to have to go with the 17 ALCS.
Interesting. We have our first 1 seed down, and the 1 seed made it far, but didn't make it as far as a 1 seed normally does. But anyways, down to our next Final 4 matchup here, we have the 2012 Eastern Conference Final loss to the Devils versus the Plaxico Burress shooting of himself.
So, the Rangers, if they advance past the Devils, the Kings were a force to be reckoned with, and they as we would see a couple of years later with the Rangers, I think they beat the Devils in 5 or 6 pretty handily. The Burress thing, I kind of have to agree with Coughlin. I think there's a good chance that I think the Giants were clearly the best team in the league that year, and there's a really good chance that they go deep in the playoffs. Obviously, there's no guarantee they win the Super Bowl, but I think there's a good chance they go deep in the playoffs and make another good run.
Yeah.
So that whole scenario with Burris, that was really painful, both literally and figuratively. So it's gonna advance past the 2012 Eastern Conference Final.
All right, so you're going with Burris on that one?
I am, yes.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I wanted to check. All right, so our Final Four matchup, or our final matchup of this bracket, is actually going to be the 2017 ALCS against Plaxico Burris. So go ahead.
Oh, my gosh. They only get harder, right? The matchups only get harder. Boy.
They get more painful. That's
they
what
get more. They get more painful. You know what? I'm gonna say, if the Yankees move past the Astros, I'm pretty confident they beat the Dodgers in the World Series. I think they were a little bit of a Cinderella team, and that usually doesn't happen with the Yankees. I think they would have beat the Dodgers as good as they were in 17. And because the Yankees are my biggest love, I'm going to have to go with the 17 ALCS. Yeah, as painful as the Burris thing was.
Yep, that makes sense to me because that's a playoff thing. You know, the Burris thing happened before the playoffs, but you know the ALCS is a playoff thing, so that makes a lot of sense to me. All right, so we're moving into you want to go through all four at this point?
Let's get the whole thing done.
All right. And compared to what I said to you before, I think we might as well just go ahead through the whole thing.
Yeah,
and,
I agree with that.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about winners afterwards or
Yep.
or whatnot, and we'll do that in a separate thing. But
okay.
All right, so